America's most haunting unsolved murder. 77 years and still no answers. The Black Dahlia. Los Angeles, 1947. The morning that changed everything. January 15, 1947. A cold Tuesday morning in Los Angeles, California. A woman is walking through an empty lot in a quiet neighborhood called Unburied Park. She has her young daughter with her. They're just taking a morning stroll. Then she stops. In the middle of the field, she sees something white lying on the ground. At first glance, she thinks it's a broken store mannequin. Maybe someone threw it away. She walks closer, and then she realizes it's not a mannequin. It's a human body. A young woman. But here's the thing that made even the most experienced police officers go pale. The body had been cut completely in half. Right at the waist. Clean. Precise. Almost surgical. And there was not a single drop of blood on the ground around her. Not one drop. That means she wasn't killed here. Someone killed her somewhere else, drained every drop of blood from her body, and then carefully placed her here, in the open, where she would be found. Whoever did this wanted the world to see. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, known to the world as the Black Dahlia. A murder so shocking, so carefully carried out, and so deeply mysterious that it has never been solved, in 77 years. Let's go back to the beginning. A girl with a dream. Elizabeth Short was born on July 29, 1924. In Hyde Park, Massachusetts. She was the third of 5 daughters. Life wasn't easy for the Short family. When Elizabeth was just 6 years old, her father abandoned his car near a bridge, leaving everyone to believe he had jumped. He hadn't. He had simply walked away from his family. Her mother, Phoebe, was left alone to raise 5 children during the Great Depression. It was tough. It was painful. But they survived. Elizabeth grew up in a small town. She struggled with health problems as a child. Severe asthma kept her in and out of hospitals. But even through all of that, one thing never changed. Elizabeth had a dream. She wanted to be a movie star. She loved the glamour of Hollywood. The lights. The cameras. The fame. She was, by all accounts, strikingly beautiful. Dark black hair. Pale skin. Bright blue eyes. She always dressed in black. Her friends called her the Black Dahlia. A nickname inspired by the 1946 movie The Blue Dahlia that was popular at the time. At 19, she left home and started chasing that dream. She moved around, Florida, Chicago, and finally Los Angeles. By 1946, she was in LA. Just 22 years old. Living out of a suitcase. Staying with different friends. Working small jobs. Hollywood never gave her the big break she was hoping for. But she kept trying. On January 9, 1947, Elizabeth Short was seen alive for the very last time. She was at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. After that, nothing. 6 days of silence. And then, on the morning of January 15th, that woman in Unburied Park found her. What the police found. When LAPD detectives arrived at the scene, they were deeply disturbed by what they saw. Not just because of how horrible it was, but because of how deliberate it appeared. Every detail seemed intentional. The first thing that shocked investigators. The body had been cut in half, precisely at the waist, with what forensic experts said required significant medical knowledge and surgical skill. This was not random. This was not the work of someone acting out of sudden rage. This took time. This took planning. The second thing. As mentioned, there was absolutely no blood at the scene. Elizabeth's body had been completely drained of blood before being placed there. That kind of procedure requires knowledge, equipment, and a private space. The third thing. Her face had been cut on both sides of the mouth, extending the corners of her lips toward her cheeks. A signature. Almost like whoever did this was leaving a calling card. The fourth thing, and perhaps the most disturbing. Her body showed clear signs that she had been tortured before her death. Elizabeth did not die quickly. She suffered. The coroner's report confirmed that the cause of death was hemorrhage and shock from the cuts to her face, meaning she was alive when it happened. Police began their investigation immediately. They expected a break in the case within days. What happened instead shocked everyone. Within just a few weeks, more than 50 people walked into police stations across LA and confessed to the murder. 50 people. But after careful investigation, not a single one of them was telling the truth. Some were mentally ill. Some were seeking attention. Some wanted to be famous, even for something horrible. Every single confession was false. The real killer had not come forward. And as detectives dug deeper into Elizabeth's life, they uncovered something unexpected. Who could have done this? Over the decades, investigators and independent researchers have focused on several prime suspects. None were ever charged. Here are the three most credible ones. Suspect number 1, Dr. George Hodel. In 2003, a retired LAPD homicide detective named Steve Hodel published a book. It was called Black Dahlia Avenger. The author's conclusion was stunning. He believed the killer was his own father, Dr. George Hodel. George Hodel was one of Los Angeles' most prominent physicians in the 1940s. He was intelligent, well-connected, and had extensive surgical knowledge, more than enough to carry out what was done to Elizabeth's body. Steve Hodel found old photographs in his father's belongings after his death, including a photo of a young woman who looked remarkably like Elizabeth Short. But perhaps the most revealing detail came from old LAPD records. Detectives had actually placed listening devices inside George Hodel's home in 1949, 2 years after the murder. In one of the recorded conversations, Hodel was heard saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now." That recording exists. And yet, the investigation was suddenly dropped. George Hodel left the United States and moved to the Philippines shortly after. He was never brought back, never questioned, never charged. Why did the LAPD stop the investigation? Why was he allowed to simply leave the country? Nobody has ever given a satisfying answer to those questions. Suspect number 2, Walter Bailey. Walter Bailey was also a doctor, a surgeon, specifically. He lived just 1 block away from where Elizabeth's body was found. His daughter knew Elizabeth's family personally. And here's the detail investigators found interesting. Walter Bailey began showing signs of serious mental and behavioral decline in the months following Elizabeth's murder. He died exactly 1 year after her body was discovered. Some researchers believe he may have confessed to someone close to him before his death, but that information was never brought to police. No physical evidence ever connected him to the crime. But the proximity, the timing, the connections, they're hard to ignore. Suspect number 3, Mark Hansen. Mark Hansen was a wealthy nightclub owner in Los Angeles. Elizabeth Short had actually lived in his home for a period of time in 1946. He was known to have romantic feelings toward her, feelings that, according to witnesses, she did not return. Police interviewed him. He denied everything. He was released. But his name kept coming up, again and again. In witness accounts and investigative reports over the following decades, the killer reaches out. 3 weeks after Elizabeth's body was found, the Los Angeles Examiner newspaper received a package in the mail. Inside were items belonging to Elizabeth Short. Her birth certificate, her social security card, names and addresses from her personal address book, and a note that read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." But here's what made investigators' blood run cold. Every single item in that package had been soaked in gasoline before being mailed. Every fingerprint, destroyed. Whoever sent this wasn't just a killer. They were careful, methodical, smart. They were playing a game. Over the following months, More letters arrived, sent to newspapers and to the police directly. In one letter, the writer promised to turn themselves in. In another, they taunted investigators, suggesting the police would never find them. And then, the letters stopped. Just like that. No more taunting. No more promises. Silence. The case went cold. The questions that remain. The LAPD interviewed more than 750 people in connection with this case. 750 people. And still, no arrest. No conviction. No answer. Why? Reason 1. The technology simply didn't exist. In 1947, there was no DNA testing. No digital forensics. No security cameras. Evidence that today would crack a case wide open was lost or compromised within the first 48 hours. Reason 2. The investigation was deeply flawed. Multiple journalists and investigators over the decades have argued that the LAPD of the 1940s was riddled with corruption. Important leads were not followed. Powerful people were protected. The investigation may have been deliberately slowed or stopped. Reason 3. Everyone who might have known is gone. Every serious suspect identified over the decades is now dead. Any confession, any private admission, buried with them. Reason 4. The media circus poisoned the well. The case became so famous, so sensationalized, that distinguishing real leads from fiction became nearly impossible. 50 false confessions in the first few weeks alone set the investigation back by months. The truth, if it still exists, is buried somewhere under decades of time, corruption, and unanswered questions. What we're left with. Elizabeth Short came to Los Angeles with a suitcase, a smile, and a dream. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to matter. She deserved a life, a real one, full of the things she was chasing. Instead, the world remembers her name only because of how she died. And the person who took her life? They walked away. They lived out their days, possibly surrounded by people who never knew what they had done. They died without ever being held accountable. The Black Dahlia case remains an open file with the LAPD to this day. It stands as one of the most haunting reminders that justice, real justice, is not always served. That powerful people sometimes escape consequences. That some victims never get the ending they deserve. Elizabeth Short deserved better. And so did every person who loved her. If this story made you think, drop a comment below. Who do you believe did it? And if you want more stories like this, the cold cases, the cover-ups, the mysteries history tried to bury, subscribe. Because we're just getting started. Next time, a serial killer who operated in broad daylight in 1960s San Francisco. He sent letters to the police. He gave himself a name. And he was never caught. The Zodiac Killer. Coming next.